All right, guys, today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be reacting to an interesting opinion piece, or a reaction piece is what it's called, I believe, on PushSquare.com, and it's titled, What's Next for PlayStation? This was written up by Sammy Barker, and I thought it would be interesting to go over what PushSquare has to say about what's next for PlayStation and give my thoughts on it, whether I disagree, whether I agree, and I also want to see what you guys think of it, because I do think that they bring up some interesting things here, and I have not read the entire thing myself, but after reading a paragraph or two, I realized immediately that this would be, I think, something many of you would be interested in hearing. So if you could do me a favor before we get into it and hit the like button to help the video out and show your support, I'd really appreciate that, and make sure you hit the subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel. But it starts off here by saying it's been a strange year for PlayStation, hasn't it? Objectively, the organization is arguably at the peak of its power right now. Revenue is ridiculous. It's raking in more award nominations than the rest of the industry combined. And the PS5 has been such a runaway success that it's forced retailers to implement lottery systems and other innovative technologies just to deal with the demand. For the most engaged of fans, though, the kind of people who frequent websites like PushSquare multiple times a day, it's honestly been pretty drab for a long time. In terms of daily traffic, we enjoyed record visits last year, but it certainly wasn't the news cycle that kept us afloat. Sony, we've noticed, has been edging closer and closer to Nintendo-style public relations for a while. It operates secretly, in mysterious ways, and gives us very little to work with. It feels like ancient history now, but many of you will recall that the specifics of the PS5, its core features and user interface, remain shrouded in secrecy until literal weeks before the console's release. Tentpole titles like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart remain sealed behind closed doors. So just to give my thoughts on the opening paragraphs here, I have to mostly agree with this, and maybe this is coming from a position of I cover this stuff, I'm always looking for this stuff for the channel, and maybe the individual who's writing this up over at PushSquare, maybe they feel similarly, you know? I don't know if the most hardcore PlayStation fans feel this way as well, but they might. I do get a sense that Sony does like to sleep for a while before they say something, before they do something. Granted, when they do something, it's usually something pretty big, but I have kind of felt that way ever since I really started covering PlayStation in a more significant way. There are just some weeks where there's seemingly a lot going on, and then there are weeks where it's like Sony themselves, they're not really saying or doing anything. And I don't know, that's what I've noticed. I don't necessarily know it's a bad thing, but let's continue on here. It says, to be fair to the organization, earlier this year it opened up a bit. Jim Ryan scheduled a rare interview with GQ and casually rattled off half a dozen or so key announcements, including the existence of a next-gen PSVR headset. The consequence for the hardcore fans is that we probably won't hear a peep from the executive again until late in the summer. A disappointing state of play took place in February, and the PlayStation blog has been somewhat subdued ever since. This is just the way things are with Sony in 2021. It's hard not to look over the fence and feel a few pangs of jealousy. While PlayStation has a comparatively loaded slate of upcoming software, Microsoft is making big moves that threaten to disrupt the status quo. We've seen it complete its acquisition of Bethesda, effectively dwarfing Sony's first-party operations, while its Game Pass initiative, regardless of financial viability, is making games like Returnal look like daylight robbery in comparison. PS Plus, to Sony's credit, is an outstanding value right now, but as time moves forward, PlayStation is going to need to react. So this is a pretty loaded paragraph here that, again, I feel like I kind of agree with it a little bit, but I do feel like maybe they're being a little bit extra here. Although, as somebody who is involved heavily in the news cycle regarding PlayStation, I do certainly understand where this individual is coming from, and I actually do share some of the same feelings. You know, the idea that Microsoft Studios now dwarf Sony's first-party operations, I mean, I think that's a strong statement. I mean, if you're looking at just the numbers, if you're just looking at the quantity, then I guess that's true, but I think we can all agree that that's not really what matters here. You know, it's not the amount of studios you have. It's not the amount, even the amount of games you release. It's the quality of the games you release at the end of the day. And I think that that's why a lot of PlayStation fans in particular don't really look at the Bethesda acquisition as, I don't want to say not a big move, because there's no denying it's like just volume wise and monetarily speaking, and just, you know, Bethesda, how big they are. Yes, it's a big move, but I've seen a lot of people kind of express this sentiment that it's like, that's great, and, you know, it's understandable why Xbox fans will be happy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly Xbox's games are going to be must play, like a lot of Sony's games are, like absolute must play games. Like, you can't miss these games, like once in a generation defining games. Maybe some games coming from Bethesda will turn out to be that way, but I just don't think it's fair to make it sound like Sony studios are basically dwarfed now. I mean, come on. Like, it's not, you know, the size of your first party studios. It's the talent that, you know, is there, and the type of games they're producing. And, you know, it talks about Game Pass here, and how Game Pass is making, you know, specifically a game like Returnal look like robbery, basically. And that I do agree with more so. Not that I want to see Sony do the same thing, like make their own Game Pass and put games like Returnal in there for $10. I think Returnal has the potential to be a sleeper hit. I do understand, though, why a lot of people look at a game specifically like Returnal and think that $70 is just too much. It needs to be $40, maybe $50 max, but 70 is just too much. And there is definitely a, you know, I don't know, just this weird dynamic where it's like, yeah, you know, Microsoft is getting ready to put every future Bethesda title, as well as every one of their titles, into Game Pass for $10 a month. And Sony is delivering a game like Returnal for $70. Now, there's a lot of people I've seen that just don't believe Returnal is going to be worth $70, and maybe it won't be. You know, maybe the general consensus when it releases is like, yeah, this is a great game, but it's not a great game that's worth $70. I think we're going to have to see about that. But, you know, he talks about PlayStation Plus, which I would argue, yeah, the value of PlayStation Plus is looking really good right now. But he ends this by saying PlayStation is going to need to react. And I do agree with that. I don't think that PlayStation has to jump to anything right now. Right? I don't think that that's necessary. But I do think that everything the competition is doing, and everything that's been going on, even though Sony is on top, I think the reaction needs to be more of a, you know, continue to do what you're doing, and then maybe add a little bit more in there just for good measure, right? Because I don't think that anything the competition is doing right now is going to suddenly reduce what Sony's been doing, or make it seem worse, or make it seem less appealing. I don't think that that's the case. I think that it just maybe adds another layer to the competition as to why you might want to pay a little bit of attention to them. But I think Sony would be wise to, you know, kind of think about what exactly they're going to add to sweeten the deal, I guess you could say, because it's a pretty sweet deal already, in my opinion. But I think that adding a little bit more to it wouldn't hurt. And it goes on to say, frankly, the Bethesda thing has changed the game. And while we don't expect Sony to roll over and let its tummy be tickled, it's going to need to invest. The strength of the Japanese giant's first-party studios is not up for debate, and its pipeline continues to be among the best in the industry. Both Japan studios shut down, Media Molecule seemingly tethered to the largely unpopular Dreams, and Sony San Diego making MLB The Show 21 for multiple platforms. The formerly unstoppable PlayStation Studios is beginning to look a little light. Well, okay, so, you know, he does obviously acknowledge the fact that the strength of Sony's first parties, it's not up for debate, which I agree with, and that the pipeline is one of the best in the industry. But he's just highlighting the fact that not every studio, you know, Sony already has less studios, but not every single studio is, you know, producing these big hit games We look at Media Molecule, and it's true, Sony San Diego is working on MLB The Show. We don't really know exactly what this second studio underneath San Diego, like we don't know exactly what they're working on. I don't think it's a, the one thing I do really agree with here that they say is that the Bethesda acquisition has changed the game. I actually fully agree with that, because I think the concerning part here is not the fact that Microsoft acquired Bethesda and pretty much made it clear that most of their games are going to be exclusive. I think the concerning part is like, it goes to show that this is the power Microsoft holds, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not. And I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like that Microsoft just straight up bought Bethesda. There's a lot of people who, and I agree with this, feel that Microsoft should be trying to grow their talent and studios organically, not just making these mega acquisitions. Regardless of our feelings on that, this is the power Microsoft holds, that Sony, they don't really have that same type of power to just make these mega acquisitions like it's nothing, And the fact that Microsoft did this made it clear that in the future, most of their games are going to be exclusive. The question then becomes, what are they going to do next? Are they, who's next? And that's concerning. I'm sorry, like that is concerning to PlayStation fans, because, okay, you got Bethesda, that's fine. What happens when it's WB next? What happens if it's Capcom next? That's where like things start to get like, okay, like this is getting a little worrisome. Goes on to say, it's really hard to criticize a platform holder that's been banging out Game of the Year nominees on an annual basis, but with blockbuster games taking more time to develop than ever before, can Insomniac Games, Guerrilla Games, Sony Santa Monica, Sony Bend, Sucker Punch, and Naughty Dog carry the burden of first-party development alone? Ryan said that PlayStation is committed to organic growth, and we've seen all of its studio staff up significantly over the past few years, but there's going to be a reckoning in a few years once Microsoft's teams get up to speed. Sony will of course continue to do what it's always done, which is to make groundbreaking games, but it does feel like some things are going to have to change. The news cycle at this point in time is dominated by a very disruptive competitor, and we can't help but feel like it needs to make a bit more noise of its own. Moreover, it's going to have to work harder than ever before to justify the value of its internally developed games, because its competitor is going to be dwarfing its output later in the generation for a nominal monthly fee. That's a problem. So, there's some really good points being made here. The only real problem with the points that are being made here is the fact that we don't know how true they're going to end up being, because we're thinking like years ahead in this current generation. I think that every concern that is brought up in this paragraph, or these two paragraphs, is a valid one that surely Sony has to be considering and is already, planning for, because it is true. Microsoft is going to be coming at Sony with value combined with volume, right? And that's a potent combination. Even though a lot of us really are about, give me 1 or 2 high quality games a year at full price rather than 10, maybe mediocre or just okay games for $10 a year. A lot of us do feel that way, like we prefer the quality, but there is no denying that the value proposition that Microsoft is setting up for this generation is something that Sony will have to contend with. And it is true that, Sony doubling down on the pricing of their games, on trying to make their games even bigger. And it's true that development pipelines may take even longer now. Them doubling down on this, I think it's a good thing ultimately, because it will ensure that they have to make sure the quality's there. Like, you can't sell a game for $70 if inherently it's not high quality. It's just not going to happen, and I'm sure we're going to see that if Sony does release a $70 game that's just objectively like, this isn't that good. You know what I mean? That'll be a problem for Sony. That won't be a problem for Microsoft, because they have that monthly nominal fee, right? That they can use to protect them. Sony doesn't have that. So I like that, but it is something that, Sony is going to have to contend with. And I do mostly agree that right now Microsoft is making some disruptive moves for sure. And it is a big deal. There are a lot of people who are starting to feel very differently about the Xbox brand with everything that's been going on. And the writer of this reaction piece is saying that they believe Sony's going to have to start making some more noise. So let's finish this article off. It says the consequence of the Bethesda buyout means that PlayStation is probably going to spend more than ever on timed exclusive. We know that it was at one point trying to lock down Starfield, but it's going to need to do more than that alone. It's probably at some point going to need an answer to Game Pass. While the platform holder's first-party pipeline remains as impressive as ever, there's an argument to be made that a once world-beating stable of studios now looks minuscule compared to the competition. Most importantly of all, the time of Sony sitting on the sidelines is probably coming to an end. It's going to need the energy of the PS3 era if it's to overcome the noise being emitted by the team in green. These long periods of silence from the platform holder can't continue for much longer. As PlayStation fans, there's still so much to be excited about, but it is the platform holder really making the most of everything it has in its arsenal. Competition breeds excellence, of course, and it's becoming increasingly clear that the PS5 is not going to have an easy ride. The gauntlet has, in many ways, been thrown. Let's hope that Sony is up to the challenge. All right, so look, I'm not gonna lie. Like with this closing paragraph, I feel like they're being a little overly negative. Okay, maybe not negative, but a little overly fearful, and I get that because I have been looking at everything that's been going down. But I feel like we need to kind of try to have a more overhead view here and not be so fearful, because there's no doubt in my mind that Sony does run the risk of being too complacent, of, allowing Microsoft over the next couple of years to basically just kind of rapidly climb that mountain and be right up there with them and catch them off guard. I think that's certainly a possibility. But overall, I don't know. I just don't. I feel like the problem here is this article is written assuming that Sony is going to keep the same exact approach that it has right now, right? Going into the rest of this year, going into 2022, and that could be a possibility. I just don't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely that Sony is taking this acquisition lightly. I just don't feel that Sony or Jim Ryan over there or whoever else is in charge, I don't feel like they're just kind of like looking at what's going on and being like, who cares? Like, we're fine. We don't have to worry about anything. That's not how you run a business. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a dumb thing to do. Sony did that before with the PS2 going into the PS3, and they learned their lesson the hard way, and Jim Ryan was there for that. So I highly doubt they're going to allow that to happen again. I just think that Sony is waiting purposely, because we can sit here and say that, yes, this Bethesda acquisition, it's a big deal and it's making waves and it's generating conversation, but what has been done like right now, right? It just seems likely to me that Sony isn't worried about Microsoft announcing they acquired Bethesda. Sony isn't ready to react to that. Sony doesn't feel the need to react to that. Sony isn't, waiting for Phil Spencer to confirm Bethesda exclusivity and then feeling the need to react to it. I think what Sony's waiting for is, when are they going to show their next big game? When are they going to show Starfield? When are they going to have a barrage of new game announcements and reveals that generate a lot of hype? Because that is when Sony reacts. That is when Sony steps in and my opinion, reminds everybody that, oh yeah, be excited for Starfield, be excited for the competition, but don't forget what we're doing over here. Come on, like, think of it this way. If Starfield is the next big game that Bethesda is going to reveal, obviously Phil Spencer has seen this. Maybe he's super excited for it and he's saving this as like the big, E3 like megaton announcement from Bethesda that's going to like blow everybody away and be like, oh my God, it's Elder Scrolls in space. And I'm sure it'll be good, right? Well, I'm not sure of that, but it seems like it's going to be a quality game based off of how long they've been developing it. All Sony has to do, I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. All Sony has to do is drop the next God of War trailer, and there you go. That doesn't make it so that no one cares about Starfield all of a sudden, but it certainly makes it so that, oh yeah, wait, the PlayStation, right? PS5, God of War, oh yeah, like, you know what I mean? That's all I'm trying to say, is it's Sony's games, in my opinion, have been doing so well. Like, the quality of these games is so high, and they're just so on top of their game, man. And Microsoft, I'm going to be brutally honest right now, they're just not. They're just not. And frankly, neither is Bethesda. You know, neither of these publishers have been at the top of their game. It's been quite some time. I'm sorry, but the only thing that Microsoft has as of right now is quantity. That's what they have. Yes, they have more IP than ever before that they now own, and some of these IP are juggernauts. I'm not denying that, but I mean, let's be honest. Elder Scrolls 6 is years and years away. Starfield is going to be probably the next big game from Bethesda, and I just don't know that that's going to compete with God of War. I don't know that that's going to compete with Guerrilla Games and Horizon Forbidden West. I don't know that that's going to compete against whatever Naughty Dog's next title is, whatever Sucker Punch's next title is. Now, you could say, well, what if there's Starfield and then all of these other games like Halo Infinite and then some of the smaller games that they're going to have? Maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, is that enough to make Sony feel like they have to like be concerned about the path that they're on and the way they're handling it? I don't know that it is. Honestly, and I guess just where I can end this reaction video is I understand completely like where this article is coming from. I think that there's a lot of valid points made, a lot of valid concerns, and even criticisms, right? Like, I would love for Sony to talk more, you know? I mean, dude, like, I cover PlayStation news here. Like, I would love more than anything for Sony to start talking more and to start just like dropping news every week. I'd love that. But there is, you know, something to be gained for Sony by remaining quiet, by kind of remaining in the shadows as long as they need to until they really feel, because it means when they do emerge, they're going to have something big to say. They're going to have something big to show. You know what I mean? And they don't need to dominate the news cycle all year long, which again, I would love for them to do that. But when they do say something, everybody's going to pay attention. And that's not to say that everybody isn't paying attention to Microsoft right now, but Microsoft, here's the fact of the matter, okay? Microsoft still has so much to prove. They proved that they're serious with this acquisition. They proved that they will spend the money they need to try to be as competitive as they possibly can be. And they proved that the value proposition is what they are doubling down on. And that's all great. But they still have a lot to prove, you know? They still have to show the games. And the games have to look good. The games have to look promising. The games have to look like high-quality games. And when they do that, that's when Sony's going to come out and give them, you know, the fight that this article is trying to insinuate needs to happen, right? That's when Sony's going to make noise. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for the video. It turned out really long, but I thought that this was really interesting, and I appreciate articles like this because I think they're perfect for us. You know, give it a read for yourself. Give them a click. It's an interesting article, and I will be very interested to see what you guys have to say. Like, you know, do you agree with, let's see, it was Sammy Barker who wrote up this reaction article. Do you mostly agree with him, or do you think that maybe, you know, he's jumping the gun a little bit too much or being a little bit too fearful? Let me know down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out. On top of all that, but until next time, guys, take care.